Okay, hello everyone. Welcome again to another episode of LangBytes, your podcast about computational linguistics. And in today's episode, we have the honor of talking to Chris Brousseau. And Chris is a principal data scientist who excels in linguistically informed NLP techniques. He loves languages, as I think almost all linguists do, and NLP, and he strives to meld the two in useful ways. So, Chris, first of all, thank you for coming and thank you for accepting the invitation.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. So, as everybody knows by now, we start with our random question, which is a little bit more personal, and we get to know a little bit more about the guest. And your question is, what is your favorite room part of your house and why?
Awesome. So it's actually this room. It's my office. I love it because I got this chair that I can sit on. I have my Star Wars posters back there that you can see, and I've got all these like fun little collectibles that just remind me of memories. Like this is the Arabesh Coca-Cola from Disneyland. I haven't even been. One of my friends got this for me, and so it's
Uh-huh.
just full of fun memories, and this is where I do my work and
Okay.
play around. It's really
Mhm.
great.
So it's also is where you work and when you stock your souvenirs, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Good, good. Nice. Interesting. Thank you for that. And
Yeah,
now we are going to move into the serious questions. Not serious, but about the podcast itself questions.
sure.
So the first question is, can you give us a little bit of an overview of what career path we can have when we are computational linguists,
Hmm.
and if possible, you can give us a little bit of your academic background so people know what you studied and how you move into computational linguistics.
Sure. So I got my bachelor's, my undergrad in linguistics from BYU. That's Brigham Young University in Utah. That university is very linguistics and especially translation focused. And so that like I was a translator at the time, and that got me interested in machine translation. And so the connection was there, and I was just at the school at a really opportune time for it. There were some Python and machine translation courses that I took, and I took some deep learning courses and some machine learning courses, and that kind of dipped my feet in the water. And by the end of it, I was taking like corpus and computational linguistics courses from the likes of Mark Davies, who I love.
Mm-hmm.
He's super awesome. And at the same time, I was creating machine learning models and working as a data scientist at the library at that school, which a lot of it is just straight up luck. I did it at the right time. And in my experience there, actually, there's kind of a branch as far as opportunities for computational linguists right now, where you have on the left side kind of the data branch, I'm going to call it, where a lot of computational linguistics involves using computational algorithms and methodologies in order to analyze language, which is fantastic. But what that brings up is the fact that more people are interested in more diverse data.
Yeah.
We need more data on lower resource languages, and computational linguists are in a fantastic spot to collect and engineer that data. If you come at it from just a linguistics perspective, where you're collecting and cataloging the data, it can be useful, but there still is work on the other end of it to try and convert that data into something even more useful for NLP engineers, which that's the other branch. You have your data branch and you have your text processing NLP branch. And if you can find a way, like I don't want to discourage anyone. If you can find a way to do both of those, like boom, you
Mm-hmm.
are invaluable. But on the data side of things, you have the collection and the processing. And if you can get familiar with the fundamentals of data engineering and how that data is going to be used later, you can collect it in those formats and eliminate a lot of the work and be a lot more valuable, be able to charge more for your services and everything. And that part of this ecosystem is becoming more valuable right now. It's really cool. On the
Mm-hmm.
other side of things, that this is the side that I'm more concerned with: text processing, especially multilingual text processing is fantastic. Like so many people need it. So many people are interested in it right now because of LLMs and everything. It's fantastic and lucrative, and I really recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also when you are learning like the collection part and what you said, collecting and let's say storing the data as well, right?
Mhm.
Um, as you're doing that, you can also learn the NLP engineering part
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
because you have colleagues that will be the NLP engineers, and of course you can ask them for help, or you can do like side hustles or side projects that can teach you that.
absolutely. Yeah. My personal experience is going all the way towards one side of it and then having to broaden what I'm doing to
Mm-hmm.
learn into the data engineering aspect, and I would love to get into field collection. I think that was my dream when I started studying linguistics, and I haven't gotten around to it. But if you start over there, you're going to do the exact same thing that you're talking about, where you broaden it, and once you can get that full spectrum, that's it. You're invaluable. That's
Yeah,
what every company wants and needs right now.
yeah, and you can get whatever job you want.
Yeah.
Great. But in your experience, talking about those two branches, or you can talk about the one that you are in right now, what are the key skills and qualifications that computational linguists should have in order to be a good, or let's say have a competitive resume
Mm.
to get a job?
That's It's hard. It's a hard question, especially because most employers in this realm right now don't uh, they aren't looking for computational linguists, right? They're looking for technical co-founders. They're looking for software engineers. They're looking for machine learning engineers. Computational linguist is not a title that's on their radar right now. So if you can brand yourself as one of those other things and bring a computational linguistics skill set as well, like that's the key. For me, that's been data scientist, where data science requires some math and some statistics and some programming, but you don't have to be like a PhD level in math or statistics or programming in order to be an effective data scientist. So that's been helpful for my branding because I've been able to I've been able to get by on the things that I don't know everything about, and then really showcase the things that I do know a lot about. For me, that's largely training and testing models, optimizing models, and then Slavic languages. I love those,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been incredibly helpful. So if we were to break it down into like those core skills, I think having a background in mathematical notation, even if it's not a deep one, is really, really helpful. Having a background in statistics is really, really helpful. Having some programming knowledge is invaluable. Like you're going to need that either side of things. I think the whole industry is moving that direction to have some programming knowledge. And then I would say multilingual ability. If you speak a language, especially if it's a language that's not from the exact same, linguistic family as your native language, if you're
Mm-hmm.
bilingual in those areas, that can be really helpful for perspective and just seeing problems in data before you have to run some sort of an analysis and then skipping ahead,
Yeah.
solving them early. It's
Uh-huh.
fantastic.
Well, you said back having background in statistics, mathematics, programming. Um, does that entail that someone should go to college to study those things, or do you mean like short courses or self-teaching?
It could be. I don't know what the best path is there. I can tell you, like from my experience, going to college doesn't necessarily make sure that you learn it better. What it does do is it helps teach you the language that everyone who also went to college would know to say things in. Like if you're going to study economics, you can technically just like get some books from the library instead of study it by yourself. But if you go to college and go through the same economics courses as everybody else, you know the jargon,
Mm-hmm.
what people are calling things. So you can risk it. If you know your stuff, it's going to come through. It doesn't matter if you went to college or not,
Mm-hmm.
but college will help you learn the vocabulary that you need to immediately show that you know it without having to prove it.
Good. Yeah. Interesting point. Okay. And still talking about the common skills that I'm sorry, the key skills that a computational linguist should have. Um, so what are some of the common skills and qualifications that you see that employers look for when they are hiring data scientists with
Mm.
a linguistics background? Or is there any necessity of contracting or of hiring, sorry, or do you see any employers hiring data scientists with a linguistics background, and how can those people, those computational linguists, develop those skills?
That's a really, I'm going to say, astute question, because the big thing here is we've been on a data push for like 5 to 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
We've ended the era of big data and entered the era of clean data. And what that means is there are a lot of employers, like a plethora of employers that have been burned in the past by hiring really smart data scientists that never ship a product. So I'm going to say number one thing that employers are looking for with data scientists, with machine learning engineers, with DevOps engineers, with anybody adjacent, data engineers, like anyone adjacent to this entire ecosystem, is have you shipped a product before? They care about that in a lot of ways more than they care about, can you speak about it mathematically?
Mm-hmm.
Can you prove that you know the math for this algorithm or whatever? They care about, have you actually built something?
Mm-hmm.
So like my number one advice there is bite off a project that's bigger than you can chew. If you're interested in large language models, go right now on GitHub and download a large language model, try to fine tune it, try to train it to do something that you want it to do, fail and fail and fail, and then finally succeed. Just bang your head against the wall until you have a project that you did from start to finish that you can show to people, because that's the most invaluable skill here. Is
Mm-hmm.
can you not give up when it gets hard and when you don't know how to do it? Because this is bleeding edge stuff. This,
Yeah.
when you are looking for an answer online, there's a large chance that nobody has found that answer, and you're just going to come up with other people's questions.
Yeah.
That's the number one skill that I think. Just have you built something before?
Good, good. So you're saying that especially if you are a beginner, you should build a portfolio, for example.
Yeah. And specifically, don't follow somebody's tutorial for how to build your portfolio. Just build something. It doesn't even have to be good. It's just the fact that you built it from the ground up. That's the most impressive thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And do you have any suggestions or of kind of projects that will be interesting for computational linguists to go on and try it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, if you're familiar with the features of language, right? As a computational linguist, when we think about language, we think about it in terms of like syntax, semantics, pragmatics, morphology, and phonetics, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is pick one of those and build something that improves how we're currently doing things. So, like, let's say you're a morphologist, you really love morphology, you argue with people about whether morphemes exist and how they're split up, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Great. We use morphology to perform tokenization and embeddings in linguistics, mostly tokenization. So go look at your byte level byte pair encoding tokenizer. Go look at your sentence piece tokenizers. Go look at character level tokenizers, white space tokenizers. Go look at the overview of tokenizers and build one. Build one yourself. Train some of the ones that already exist and see what's wrong with them morphologically, because that's your expertise. If you're really interested in phonetics, right? There's a reason that we're not just publishing a text version of this interview, right? It's because there's so much information lost within the phonetics, within the actual speech production. There's a huge influx of models and companies interested in phonetics or phonetic based models, whether that's making plankton sing diamonds by Rihanna, right? Like that people want the singing models, they want the fun
Uh-huh.
stuff. Do that, if you like phonetics, do that. If you're into syntax, do the actual language modeling. If you're into semantics, do embeddings. If you're into pragmatics, look at prompt engineering and prompt tuning. Just make something that improves it. Because
Mhm.
that's the main thing. When you talk to mathematicians and you talk to statisticians about, why are you not interested in the linguistics of what you're doing with language modeling? They're like, well, linguists don't have any solutions for us. They just like point out the problems. I know that's not true because like I studied linguistics in college. I know that's not true, but that's the impression, right?
Mhm.
So build something that proves it wrong and boom, you've got a job, you've got whatever you'd like in the field.
Good, good. That's a good. Um, especially for very beginners, I believe that portfolio will be a good option because since you don't have like a formal job experience, then the projects will show that you have something.
Yeah, right. I'll give you an example for me. One of my portfolio projects was creating I downloaded all of the scripts of all of the Star Wars movies and all of the shows and everything
Ooh.
and just created a data set of all of Star Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I trained a large language model is 20 billion parameters. I trained a large language model on Star Wars. And then I used it to generate, Star Wars interactions that I thought were fun. And then I got kind of bored with what I'd done and decided to take it multimodal and trained that model to do kind of clip embeddings and feed it to a diffusion model to generate Star Wars photos and Star Wars videos.
Nice.
And like that's what I did because I really like Star Wars. I mean, those are my posters right there. So that's
Those
what I
posters
did.
were from the model you trained?
No.
Ah, okay.
I wish. No, those are the original movie posters
Ah, okay, okay.
for the episodes 4, 5, and 6. No, I wish. I can show you some of the output from the model, but it's like that's what I did. And even though it's not like Disney quality, it's not really fantastic. Like, let's go make a movie with this right now. It would need a lot more work, but just the fact that I banged my head against the wall and I made a data
Mm-hmm.
set and I made a workflow and I made a model that works, like boom,
And you have
that's
something
helpful
to
and that's
show.
interesting. I have something to show. Yeah.
Great, great. Can you send this link so I can put it on the video later on?
To the model or to
To
some outputs or
your portfolio because the link is there, right? To the model.
oh sure, yeah.
Okay, great. So guys, I will put on the video description. That will be nice, very nice. Um, so my next question is a little bit about your job transition
Mhm.
that I saw on your resume on LinkedIn because you had been a professor.
So I was an adjunct professor. I wasn't
Yeah.
like a full-blown professor, but I
Uh-huh,
was an
uh-huh.
adjunct.
Yeah. And I imagine you've taught Slavic languages, right?
That's right. I taught Slovak and Czech languages.
Okay. So how was the process of deciding to get out of academia? Was it because of the uncertainty of jobs? Was it because of the toxic environment? Or just because it wasn't for you? Or um,
Wow. That's a
because of the payment?
it's a lot. There are a lot of things. Some of it was some of what you mentioned, right? There was uh I really struggled as a teacher in that professor role. Part of that was just because, being paid as an adjunct professor was not enough to sustain me and I had to have other jobs, right? And so I wasn't able to devote as much time towards developing and enacting the curriculum that I wanted as I would have wanted. I wish that I could go back and change that. Some of it was as soon as I got offered a job, looking at that paycheck versus my adjunct professor paycheck and just going like, wow, this one's a lot bigger. um I think a bigger part of it though was I don't know how bleeding edge academia is compared to the corporate version. You know what I mean? Where you look at like where the biggest papers are coming out of, most of them are not coming out of like UC Berkeley or Stanford or BYU. You know, they're coming out of DeepMind, and they're coming out of Facebook AI Research, FAIR, and they're coming, you know, they're coming from corporations that pay researchers,
Mm-hmm.
which that's what I like. You know, I like the bleeding edge. And I remember specifically one moment when I was talking with one of my professors at BYU. He teaches a lot of machine learning classes, and I was taking a deep learning class from him at the time. And I asked him, I was like, hey, when are we going to learn in this class about, because we're going over model training with PyTorch and all of this stuff. It was really cool, but I was like, when are we going to learn how to deploy these models? You know, when
Mm-hmm.
are we going to make it so that like I can show my grandma what
Yeah.
I did?
The practice part. Right?
Yeah, the practical part. And he said, we're not going to go over that, and there's no class for it because it's not academically interesting.
Well,
And that stuck with me. You know, I was like, I don't believe that at all. And having done it several times, it is incredibly academically interesting. Stuff like sparse quantization is super academic. Stuff like model optimization or like flattening a knowledge graph, all of that stuff, amazing. It's really, really cool. Or face, you know, the Facebook AI semantic search, looking at that and how it works and how it's partitioning memory as it's indexing. That's super academically interesting. And it makes me wonder, like, did he just not know how? Was he avoiding it? Ultimately that the answer doesn't matter, but that's the impression that I got within academia. Is it's just you only study the things that you consider academically interesting, and you don't really do anything else.
mm-hmm.
And I didn't like that.
It is like a bubble, right? They usually
Yeah,
don't get out of the bubble. Yeah.
I would, admittedly, I still would like to go get a PhD, maybe in my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
um I still would like that, but not with the intention of being a professor again. I would
Mm-hmm.
like a PhD for the experience of like going in and researching something that I want to research all the way through,
Yeah.
finishing it, and then coming back into
Yeah.
like the corporate side of the field, you know?
Yes. And also, right, to advance your skills that you already have and build new ones, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what a PhD is for. And also, I noticed that there are some job openings in the big tech companies like Google, Deep Learning, that they ask for a PhD, right? So
Yeah.
maybe you can fill up these openings later when you do,
Yeah.
when you finish.
Well, there's a huge gap between people who have PhDs and also have the skills to do this stuff, and people who want PhDs, I guess. There's a gap. There aren't enough people within this field who are both qualified and have shipped products, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would love to fill that. I would love to encourage your viewers to also try to fill that. We need more people studying this stuff and shipping products.
Yes.
There aren't enough.
Great, great, great. Good tip. Um, Now we're going to move on to a topic I think you would like because we can see behind you. Uh, so you have a YouTube channel
Yeah.
and there are a lot of videos there of video games, and I imagine you are playing the video game, right?
Yep, that's right.
So
Yeah.
how do you think NLP can be implemented in games, and do you know the market for that for linguists?
Wow. I like where this is going for a couple of reasons. The first one, how do I think NLP can be implemented in games? Anyway, you know, like the
Endless, right?
whole thing is open. I think number one, like if you want to stick to traditional game design, the number one way of using NLP would be kind of like Supergiant does this. They did it in Bastion, they did it in Hades. I'm trying to think of other games. I think Ghost of Tsushima did this to a certain extent, where you log what the player did and you analyze what the player did, and then you use NLP to either do text processing on that and generate things for your narrator to say, or
Ooh.
pre-recorded lines for your, like, you know, a dynamic narrator that narrates what you do, which That's pretty cool. That's one of the things that I loved about Bastion when I played that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fantastic way of doing NLP. I don't know if they had like a model doing that. I don't think that they did. I think it was just they had a stack of possible things that, or a queue of possible things that the player did, and then voice lines that were pre-recorded from the
Mm-hmm.
narrator. It got more complex in games like Hades, where they have like a whole like 6 dialogue options for every single time that you talk to an NPC, with 3 of them being story related, 3 of them being random. Now, the hard part with Hades, which that won game of the year in 2019 or 2020, like it's a fantastic game, strongly recommend it. But the thing is, they had to write so much in
Mm.
order to fill up all of those dialogue
It was a
boxes.
manual
Right.
stuff, right?
It was manual. I think that with the advent of LLMs and fine tuning an LLM, you can cut down on that work. In fact, some of my buddies and I are working on a game right now where all of the NPCs in the game are completely interactable because they're run by a large language model, right?
Ooh,
So
nice.
all of the dialogue is generated on the spot, on the
Uh-huh.
fly, based on the lore of the game that it got to train on, and based on like all of the actions that the player's done that's able to fit inside your context window, along
Uh-huh.
with their inventory, their job, like all of that stuff.
Okay.
It's, and our prototypes are pretty cool so far. um
Are you doing this like a personal project, a side hustle, part of a company?
kind of all three, right? It started as a fun personal project. It's turned into a side hustle, and we're meeting with VCs right now to try and see if this should be a company.
Nice. Nice.
I think it'd be really cool. But talking about that application, it's just, games are run using language. A lot of it's programming language, but some of it is natural language. And
Mm-hmm.
so any application that you can think of for how NLP can fit into that works.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the trick is trying to make it fun, which I don't like. That cuts down on the number of things that you can do. But I don't know. I think if you're creative enough, you can make anything fun, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the basic applications of NLP would be localization,
Oh,
right?
100%.
Trying to translate the game to different languages. That would be
Well, there's a
quicker with NLP.
oh sure. There's this amazing hack that somebody came up with. Are you familiar with the Whisper model?
I think I've heard it about it.
So it's a speech to text model from OpenAI that's open source. You can go download it right now and you can run it. And it's pretty state of the art. Like it works really well listening to speech and then transcribing that speech. Somebody figured out though, kind of a hack, that the model has particular uh its output layer takes an argument for what language to output in, essentially. And so they force the model to listen to you in one language and then output the transcription in another language.
Oh.
And there's a lot of applications there for real life, let alone games. But can you imagine like some sort of proximity chat that transcribes what you're saying in the language of the speaker, like real time? I think that rocks, especially when you look at a lot of the innovation going on right now is making these models smaller and making it so that they can fit. Like I did a video on fitting, I'm going to pull it up right here so you can see. Oh, I'm going to have to unplug it, but it's fine. Fitting a large language model on this Raspberry Pi, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's 8 GB of RAM, but it's able to run some like a 7 billion parameter model just through a lot of quantization and the CPT model. It's really cool. And using technology like that, it makes this type of application in a gaming context a lot more accessible,
Mm-hmm.
because if it can fit on this, I can fit it on your computer and probably your either your CPU or your GPU. The CPU is obviously, it'll take longer,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes it more accessible. It makes it more you are more readily able to implement this stuff instead of just having it as a dream in the back of your mind.
Great. And now talking about the market for that for linguists, how do you see the scenario for that?
That's a really hard question because I don't know how many companies like I know that companies like Ubisoft and EA right now are experimenting with generative AI, or Disney is another company that's experimenting with generative AI to try and either supplement or augment or replace the work of writers and other like linguists that you would call them in your company. Even
Mhm.
though like I get what you mean. Um the hard part of it is I don't know how many of these companies are specifically looking for linguists.
Mhm.
And so I think either you would need to create more awareness for the reason why the company should hire you, because they're not they if you go on their careers website, Ubisoft doesn't have any careers that are like linguist, you know,
Mhm.
and the ones that they do are like localization project manager,
Yeah.
and that's not necessarily what you want to do. I don't want to degrade that career at all because it's fantastic. I've been a localization project manager and I loved it. It was awesome. But if you're wanting to do more writing, you may need to forego your branding as a linguist and take on the branding of a writer, you know.
Mhm.
Or if you're trying to do game design, like that's it. You kind of have to call yourself a game designer and prove it, do a project or two showing that you can do game design, but then do linguistically informed game design and make it
Yes.
better.
Mhm.
That's the path that I see there.
Good. Very nice. I like it. Um, Now, I notice, and I think the viewers notice as well, um, that at your job you have to code a lot, or at least it gave the impression that you have to code a lot. So I would like to know, how did you start learning programming, and how much coding is necessary in your current role?
Good questions. I started learning programming in college. I started learning programming in high school. I
Mhm.
programmed on a TI-83 calculator that I just loved. And I was fortunate enough to have a teacher in high school that really he saw that I was interested in that and he encouraged me, you know.
Mhm.
But I ultimately stopped because other people at the school thought it was like nerdy, or I got teased for it, and so I stopped. I wish that I hadn't. I wish that I'd kept going with that, because that would have that was like 4-ish years before I started coding again. When I
Mhm.
was in high school, I started coding again when I was about 20. And that was amazing. I loved it. I started in a class using PHP, where we built a, a game. We built systems for a game, like how to buy, how to sell, how to do that
Mhm.
stuff in PHP. I don't use PHP at all right now, but learning that in a college setting was extremely helpful for what I said before, like learning about design patterns,
Mhm.
learning about data structures, learning about algorithms. That was really helpful within a
Was that
college scenario.
done in a computer science department?
It was done in the digital humanities department,
Oh,
so adjacent, right?
uh-huh.
It's kind of the in between
Yeah. Kind of
linguistics
a
and computer
combination, right?
science. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It was really great, and as part of digital humanities as well, I took a JavaScript class. I do use JavaScript a lot more now. However, I think the biggest thing for me was I did Al Swigart has a course called Automate the Boring Stuff in Python with Python.
Mm-hmm.
That like awakened a desire for me, because the course doesn't teach you any of the boring computer science. So I say boring in quotations because it's not actually boring. It just seemed boring coming from the outside going in, right? It just taught me how to do things. Like it taught me how to automate my email, and it taught me how to automate a lot of my project management job at the time, where I was like taking stuff from an email and putting it into an Excel sheet, and then I was updating other Excel sheets using that Excel sheet. It taught me how to directly like just run a program to copy from the email, put it in there, and just auto populate. Awesome. I automated like probably 70 or 80% of my job from that course, which
Mm-hmm.
was so great, especially because it's free. Like he just puts it out for free. That awakened a desire in me though. And so I did more courses in college. Like I told you about the Python and machine translation course, that was huge for me. Learning how to do Python for real, or doing the machine learning courses or the deep learning course, all of that was in Python that came after this. And I was
Hmm.
interested in it because automate the boring stuff was fantastic to help, jumpstart my journey. So I'd recommend it if you feel like you're like me and you like projects, you're kind of a portfolio or project based learner. That's where I would recommend you start if you want to learn Python. Since then, I've gotten pretty good at C# and Rust along with Python, and I love them. Like it's awesome.
They're a little bit harder to learn than Python, I think.
100%. Yeah. I mean, C# is easier than C, but yeah, it's harder than Python.
Yeah. Um, and as our last question, I would like you to give any final words or advice for people who are just starting out their career in computational linguistics, or they're just graduated from college with a linguistics major,
Mhm.
and uh, you can give advice, final words, or motivation words, and what can they do to better position themselves for success in the industry?
Sure. I think that my advice would be like you got into linguistics and computational linguistics probably because like you wanted to help people or you liked languages, which we learn about that in linguistics 101, that like if you don't like somebody's accent, it's not really the accent, it's more your impression of the people that accent is attached to. You got into linguistics because you had an impression of liking languages. It's because you like people, right? Don't give that up. You When you transition into data engineering or into NLP, those paths that I talked about, the branches, you're not giving it up. You're not selling out. It's not less humanities or anything like that. It's only that if you make it that way. I've gotten a lot of fulfillment out of my career bringing the humanities into this machine learning space. And I would encourage you to do that because it deepens and enriches your teams. It enriches your relationships with those teams. It helps you inspire confidence in the people in your stakeholders, right? It's amazing. That would be my number one piece of advice is like don't forget why you started. It's because you love people,
Hmm.
and keep it there because that helps you. We have kind of an Anglo-centric view of AI right now, and that doesn't help people. What does help people is more linguistically and culturally aware people getting into this field and helping preserve languages with AI and helping expand
Preach,
languages with AI, right?
preach.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good.
what helps.
Yeah. I saw tapping on what you just said, I saw on a LinkedIn post about I think he has Indian heritage. He talked about summing up what you just said, democratization of languages in AI, like
Yeah,
putting lower resources languages there, and also
lower resource and indigenous languages,
and
right?
indigenous languages, yes, but also not not choosing researchers native languages of other languages to to feed the AI of those lower resource languages, but actually getting linguists or at least human scientists, like human sciences scientists,
Sure,
um,
yeah. Like
that
sociologists or
yeah,
anthropologists.
if you
Yeah.
if you can't find any linguists, try to find those people to get the data for you, not like a European Caucasian man that studies those things,
Yeah.
those languages.
Well, that's just it, right? Like I fit into that demographic. I'm a Caucasian European descent man in America, right? So that's part of the reason that I think that I've been so lucky in this field is I kind of look like how people expect somebody to be in this field who's smart. And I'm looking to try and help democratize it. I'm looking at, like, I want to encourage people of color and women and, you know, like every background to come into this field, because we need you. Because I don't have the experience all by myself to represent Brazil or represent Portugal or represent Nigeria, or, you know, I can do research on it, but I can't represent it by myself. We need people from those cultures to be interested and talented and work in this field. And I think that they're there, you know?
Yes, I second that. Very nice. I like it. That was a very good note to end the podcast today. So
Perfect.
that's it, guys. Thank you very much, Chris. Again, thank you very much for the conversation. Um, I'm positive that everybody learned a lot with you, and you gave great tips. I'm gonna use some of the tips you gave. Um,
Perfect.
folks, I'm going to leave some of the links that Chris made available, his LinkedIn, his portfolio. You can get in touch with him. Um, and again, Chris, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. It was awesome.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great. So guys, thank you very much. Bye bye.